I'm joined by Gurumurthy Kashinath of the National Coalition on the Education Emergency. Thank you so much for speaking to Mirror Now. Appreciate your time, sir. This means the latest data shows that at least 30,000 students have failed to go back to school in Karnataka. I'd like to know from you what can be done as an immediate step to bring these children back to school, and secondly, what kind of long-term policies should be designed to ensure the future of these children is not compromised.
Thank you so much for this opportunity. From the National Coalition on the Education Emergency, which is a group of individuals and organizations across India trying to understand what's happening to education due to COVID. First thing I would like to say is that we must all recognize that since independence, this is the biggest catastrophe that has affected education. All along the last 75 years of independent India, we have seen enrollment increase over time, attendance, quality of education steadily improving. The 2 years of school closure have set us back by years, if not decades. So the first step is all governments, that includes the Karnataka government, should acknowledge that we have an education emergency. If you see the term, we are repeatedly using the phrase education emergency to say that, hey, this is not normal. This is something very abnormal. The first thing I would really advise the Karnataka government to do is that I know that there have been attempts to identify the out-of-school children across the entire state. The RDPR in rural areas and the urban bodies have done a kind of enumeration to identify students out of school. But I suspect that, especially in the urban areas, I'm told that this enumeration is not at all clear. Yesterday, I attended a public hearing organized by ActionAid, and many parents came and said that children have left school. The government statistics may be not at all correct, I would feel, particularly for urban areas. We must know that Bangalore is 1/6 of Karnataka. So if Bangalore figures are not all right, it means out-of-school children is much, much more. So I think the first step is to do a very clear and clean identification of the children who are not in school through a child house-to-house census survey that we need to do. Department has done it before, it needs to be doing it again so that we have clear statistics to start with. You already identified multiple reasons for the dropout. Economic hardships, people have lost jobs, they're unable to pay for their school fees. And TC issue is still there, where parents are unable to pull their children out of private schools and admit them to government schools because they're not getting the TCs from private schools. The BOs in all the blocks should make sure that every child which wants to join a government school is able to do that. So these are the short-term measures. One is the enrollment, house-to-house census has to be done to identify out-of-school children. Secondly, all children who want to join government schools must be enabled to do that, because let us all remember, right to education is a fundamental right of the children. It does not at all depend on the parents' fee-paying ability. Every child should be in school. These are the two short-term measures. From the long-term measures point of view, there are several things to be done. One is nutrition has taken a beating due to the 2 years of school closure. The government must significantly enhance the midday meal contribution. Eggs must be provided, milk must be provided every day, which is already happening. Nutrition has to improve. Health checkups are required because many children are suffering psychological harm due to the school closure. Teachers are all saying students are not paying attention, students are not able to study. So a large-scale health checkup focusing on physical health and mental health is both required. Schools require significant support in terms of additional funding to repair physical infrastructure, to provide additional teaching learning materials, to appoint new teachers if required. Many students are migrating from private schools to government schools, but the government school recruitment has to be really improved. Government has recently put out a notice for hiring 15,000 teachers, but that's only middle school. We need to take care of primary school. We need to take care of high school. And also additional teachers, teaching assistants as required should be appointed. These measures have to be taken over the next 4 to 5 years. Otherwise, I want to warn all the listeners to this show that we are going to face a very unprecedented situation where over the next 10 years, we're going to have students supposedly passing 10th, but who are really illiterate. And that is a situation India has never seen since we acquired independence. And this is a warning that we need to pay attention to immediately.
That's right, Mr. Kashinath. Thank you so much for, spelling out the measures that the government and certain committees could possibly take to ensure that the students' future is not compromised. And one last question. The pandemic also exposed the digital divide in India. Apart from financial challenges and migration, do you think online education also had a big role to play in this increased dropout rate? And with physical classes resuming, could we now overcome this virtual barrier to education?
The closing decision was really wrong, and we can't single out the Karnataka government because all state governments in India pretty much, other than Andhra state government, everybody else kept schools closed for nearly 2 years. We must know that internationally India has the worst record, maybe apart from Uganda and 1 or 2 countries in Africa. No other country closed schools like India did. That was a very colossal mistake because We all know that children are least affected, least vulnerable to COVID. So the damage has been done. Online education was not really effective. Everybody accepts that. And therefore, now we can't do anything about what has happened over the last 2 years. We need to focus on what we can do in the future. I would only request all governments, kindly, there might be a fourth wave, there may be a fifth wave, but unless you see children are actually suffering and dying, kindly do not close schools. The UNICEF has said schools should be the last to be closed and the first to be open. And I think that's a dictum. Every education minister should put it on a big poster in their own office and say, do not close schools, because in school, in classroom interaction is a must for children to learn. So we need to do additional supplementary effort for children going forward. Make sure that every child is learning at the child's learning level. See, one very important problem which everybody knows, but people are not talking about it, is a child which is in class 5 today has not attended class 4 and class 3. And you're going to have a 5th standard teacher teaching that child 5th standard textbook. Can you imagine? I have not attended 3rd and 4th. How will I make sense of 5th standard maths or science? So the teaching learning methods, the teaching learning materials are to significantly be altered. It can be done. Tamil Nadu is a good example. I want to give a positive example also. They have created 2 programs, Ennum Eluthum and Idam Thedi Kalvi. These are specifically focusing on community support for supplemental teaching learning opportunities to make sure that all children learn. Karnataka is also doing something for the next 2 years, I am told, and I think that's very important to plan for. Every state government should say that this is an emergency. We need to take a long-term measure. The child has come from ICU to the general ward, but it cannot remain in the general ward. It has to come out into the real world from the ICU and the general ward. And for that, lot of health supporting measures. By that, I mean learning, teaching, learning supporting measures are required in the medium term and the long term.
Absolutely. You highlighted a very important point there that, schools should continue. Physical classes must continue because they play a very important role in the holistic development of children, as children do need, a social interaction which they essentially get while studying in classrooms. Thank you so much, Mr. Kashinath, for sparing your time and speaking to Mirror Now and sharing your perspective. Thank you.